we don't want anger, we don't want sadness, but the whole point of it is to be okay with what is.
We do tend to kind of push down the feelings that we don't like.
Is this even a logical set of thinking that I'm having about myself? Or have I just got into some sort of thinking that's really just hurting my own self and the way I view myself?
So I'm always like trying to escape.
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. This is an episode that I've actually been asked about recording something about this, right? Something I see in clients, I see in myself, I see in friends. Imposter syndrome. How do we overcome it? How do we beat it? How do we tame it? You know, there's all in this episode. It's a good length episode. So really sit down and take notes because this can change your life. Like what we talk about in this episode here, it isn't just like talking about, this does this. There's actionable steps that you can start to take in your life to start to beat your imposter syndrome. There's nothing that's going to beat your imposter syndrome overnight. I'm sorry, there's no magic pill. There's no silver bullet. It's actually a process. And we talk about the processes you can go through, the ways you can shift your mindset, the things you can start to tell yourself, the questions you can start to ask yourself. Like we really go into some good depth here. We talk a lot about, and I say we, not so much myself, but the wonderful Jenny Devonshire. We talk a lot about the causes of it. What causes it? You know, it was really important to know like what causes it. Also, what are the activating events? What are the common activating events for people as well? We talk about how imposter syndrome affects people's dating lives and relationships. This is something we come back to a number of times. We talk about the link between praise and imposter syndrome as well, because that also comes up. We talk about the link between masculinity and imposter syndrome. So there's a lot for you to get into. We talk about meditation as well and how meditation can help with imposter syndrome and the various kind of mindfulness techniques that can help us in there. So this, you know, if you take the steps that's in this episode and you have imposter syndrome over a period of time, your imposter syndrome will lessen drastically. I know this because some of the things we talk about, some of the things I talk about in this episode are things that I've done with my clients. And I'm very used to working with men with imposter syndrome because it's something that also comes up for me. So I've had to learn to beat it in the way that I have, you know, to manage it. Like imagine trying to put out a podcast every week, be on Instagram all the time, coach, you know, loads of men and groups of men. I've had to go through my imposter syndrome and tackle it. So, you know, there's some wonderful nuggets of gold in here. You know, and if imposter syndrome is something that you really want to tackle, particularly maybe in dating, relationship, or just, you know, in your career, then feel free to drop me a message on Instagram, which is @theauthenticman_. Because this is something I'm very much used to working with. But I won't yabber on for any more. And I'll let you jump straight into the episode. Welcome, guys. We've got another episode here about a topic that I know that is painful for many of us, including myself. Something that, you know, holds a lot of us back actually in all aspects of life, whether that be our work, whether that be with expressing ourselves, whether that be in our dating lives and relationships, which is something I see this come up a lot. And we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. If only that sounds more like a superhero And I have a wonderful guest who specializes in working with people and helping them really overcome imposter syndrome. Today I have with me Jenny Devonshire.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the show.
Jenny?
I'm excellent, thank you. I've been out enjoying the sun today. It always makes me happy, and I'm very pleased to be joining you here now.
Awesome. Thank you. I know that, it's good to know that I trumped the sunshine for at least an hour and a half.
Of course.
And that will be just for the listeners. What is it that you do when it comes to helping people, especially with imposter syndrome?
Well, there's different ways to kind of address it. It's probably worth talking a little bit about what it is and what it isn't, because I've noticed online and things, there's a bit of, it can be misconstrued or confused with self-doubt. When you do something for the first time, self-doubt is totally normal. It would be, quite unusual if you didn't experience it. Whereas imposter syndrome, it's when you are successful and you've had previous successes, but you fail to internalize that success. And then therefore, when it comes to repeating that again, you feel like an imposter because so basically, if you think there's a thing called the imposter cycle. And so it's you'll have an activating event or something let's say, going for an interview or giving a presentation. So you will have, it comes round, and then you'll either have people who over prepare. So they'll work for so many hours on it because they're worried. Or they'll procrastinate and they will kind of a self-handicapping. So you can kind of blame it on the not doing the work until late. Then you'll have the event, and you will then probably go well because, they're not really an imposter. They're actually very talented at whatever they're doing. Then they'll have a really short period of respite where they relief after it. But the problem is it's this part of not internalizing the success. So it'll be things you will think that it's the people in the audience felt sorry for you. You might think it's because of all the extra work you did. I've had it before, with people giving really good feedback, and I'm just they just want saying that to be nice because they didn't want me to, they thought I would get upset if they told me the truth. So it's but really, really believing all this stuff. And then that plays around again into feeding the imposter syndrome. And then so it repeats over and over again. So one way I can work with people is to it's based on attribution theory. And so attribution theory is how we attribute the cause of things. And so there's there's one for positive and one for negative events. So if you think you're an imposter, within imposter syndrome, you would, for anything negative, obviously you're going to internalize it. It's all going to be down to you. But anything when you've been successful, it's going to be external factors. Going for a job, you'll be oh, no one else must have applied for it, or all the other candidates must have been really terrible. And so that's one way I can work with people. But yeah, generally I think I might have gone off on one here. Is that all right? I didn't know if you wanted to bring it back to
that's wonderful.
Introducing myself first, but
yeah, so I'd love to know how you came to be such an expert in imposter syndrome. What was your journey to do this work?
Well, as I think most of the time when people end up helping others, it's because they've experienced it themselves. So what's quite interesting is a lot of people imposter syndrome is rife in academia, but I never had it when I was at university. And I don't know if that's just because I was younger or I don't know why, but I didn't. But it was basically, I did psychology was my undergrad. I went traveling for a while, and then I moved to London and got a job as in the city. And absolutely hated it. It's doing the typical, all the sort of destructive behaviors, drinking too much, just because I dreaded going to work. And so then I was going to the gym all the time, and I thought, oh, why don't I make what I love into my job? So I trained to become a personal trainer, But then I didn't actually take the plunge to get the job because this is when it all started to creep in. I was like, I didn't feel like I knew enough after the course. And so it was probably I started doing like things like teaching boot camps and stuff, but again, thinking, oh no, I'm not very good at this. They're probably like, my classes are rubbish. Even though lots of people came to them, I was like, oh no, they're crap. And then eventually took the plunge and became a personal trainer at Virgin Active. And like, this is when it all really started. I was just thinking like, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know anything. So I did like course after course. So I did like one in pre-postnatal exercise. Didn't think I knew enough from that. So I did another one in it, did like an advanced one. Then I was working with a lot of people with like back pain. So I was like, I don't know enough anatomy, did a Pilates qualification. Then I did yoga, but that was more just because I really wanted to. And then I did NLP and like all these different courses, thinking once I do this course, then I will feel like I'm good enough. Then I'll feel like I'm like should be doing this job. And so obviously it wasn't anything to do with knowledge. Like obviously people were going to know more than me, but I knew a lot more than the people I was working with. So it was coming from within. And then when like the pandemic hit, I decided pretty much on a whim to do a master's in sports psychology, as you do, I thought, we're going to be in a lockdown, so I might as well study, and it was a very good distraction. So anyway, for the course, we did a final research project and you could pick like any topic you wanted to do. And I thought, this is my opportunity to study imposter syndrome, like turn something that's held me back so much into something like a positive. So, but what I did is I created an intervention study. So I created 2 different interventions. One was based on cognitive behaviour therapy and with the reattribution training. So I can talk a bit more about that. And then the other side was based on acceptance commitment therapy. And so I was comparing the 2 interventions. And what was interesting is like they both had an effect. And like, so now when I work with people, I like to try and combine the 2 to see like, depending on the individual. And so, so I spent pretty much, it was like almost, I would say like 9 months studying, reading journal after journal and putting this all together. And so, that's how I came about studying it.
Wow. So it's really out of your own pain, like it's, and I say this to listeners and the people I speak to quite often is like, for myself, as I'm a dating, relationship and intimacy coach. And I started this out of my own pain of my struggles in dating and relationships and, through probably over the last kind of 10 years. And it's actually pretty common. I speak to people who the work they've come to do is an embodiment of their own kind of pain. Their pain turns into their gold, as one of my old mentors used to say to me. And it sounds like it really was quite there for you. That it reminds me of when I was doing a lot of personal development work, especially when I was living in London, and course junkies, people who just like show up at course after course after course, or people that, I remember there was a few funny moments where I would go and do different courses with different companies and keep seeing the same people and be like, oh, you're here. They're like, you're here. I'm like, and you think to yourself, oh shit, am I like them? Am I a course junkie too? But it sounds like the kind of course junkie feel, especially for, someone who is a coach, it seems quite common actually, is like, oh, I don't know enough. But when I know enough, then I'll be good enough. Yeah,
that is exactly it. And obviously you're never going to get there because that's not the solution. Like you do know plenty. And I think in those kind of professions, it's very easy to go into that because you can do all these different courses and you just think like, oh yeah, I'll just one more, this will be the answer. And it just never is. Just costs you a lot of money. It does make you more skilled though. I mean, I think as much as I hate the fact, well, no, I don't hate it, but as much as it's held me back, I do it spurred me on to always better my skills and my knowledge. So in some ways it's got like a positive, but it's also caused me like a lot of anxiety and like so probably held me back quite a lot.
Yeah. I always admire those people. I worked for a guy many years ago when I worked in tech for a long time. And he basically admitted after I worked with him for a year that he'd lied on his CV and said he'd had all this experience doing something and he'd only basically spent a couple of days doing it. And he was just like, it's fine. I know I'll be able to learn it on the job. And I remember being like, wow, I love the balls of people like that, because they're kind of like the opposite of imposter syndrome. I don't even know if there's a phrase for the opposite of that, because they're like arrogant bastards. They just believe in themselves so much, you know, that they can just learn something very quickly and deliver value. And I have an incredible admiration and envy, if I'm really honest, for those people, because I'm like, man, I wish I had a little bit more of that in me at times. I'm actually cultivating it, but you look at them and go, wow, like the balls to just believe that you just got it, you know, it's going to be fine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's real self-belief, isn't it? Like, I think, I can't remember what it was, because imposter syndrome does affect men and women. Like the first work that was done on women, like high achieving women. And they thought it was just a kind of something that did only afflict women or affect women. But I did see a statistic somewhere where it was like men would apply for a job if they had like 50%, they had 50 of the skills, and women wouldn't apply unless they had 100. But like, I guess that person's going on like another level of just confidence. But yeah, that would really spur you on. It would be great.
And it's funny that you say that about the job thing is, when I did work in tech, one of the really common things that happened was I've got two younger sisters who are about 9-10 years younger than me. So something was really common with, I'd get a call every so often and be like, oh, David, one of my friends wants to be a developer or get into tech in some way. Like, will you talk to them? And I saw this myself with the women that came forward. Is often they'd be like, oh, I'd be like, what jobs are you looking at? They'd be like, oh, these ones, but I don't have the qualifications. I'd be like, let's have a little conversation about this and look at this. And I really did see it is that often women, not all women, I like to always say that first, often women will look at something and go, oh, well, I can't do all of those things.
Yes.
So I won't be hired. And I used to always say to people, I'm like, this is like a shopping list. You know, when you go to the shops, right? You wouldn't abandon your shopping if you couldn't find, like, if you had 100 things in your list and there was one thing missing, you don't abandon the shopping trip. You just get what you can and you make it work, right? And see how it turns out. And I say this a lot to people, is like, you know, when it comes to these things, people aren't expecting to get everything, right? They're just happy to get some of the things and feel their way through it after that.
Well, that's a great analogy. I really like that. And actually, it makes me think, like, one of the people I was working with on their own imposter syndrome, they actually were looking for jobs. And we had this exact conversation about, about not applying and things. And she started applying for jobs where she thought, like, you know, these skills will be transferable. I don't necessarily have it exactly. And yeah, she got one. And it's like, just goes to show, you put yourself out there. If you put yourself there, and you'll probably be able to do a lot more than you think.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess we might have touched on this a little bit, but maybe there's some more gold in this area. It's like, where are some of the most common places that imposter syndrome shows up in people's lives?
I'd say a lot. Well, academia, as I said before, and also at work. But it's like, yeah, they did various different studies and they found it like across all sorts of domains, like different like jobs. So it was like, managers, nurses, doctors, and also it was like across cultures as well. So they found it in like, it's rife all over the place. And because it was actually, I can't remember the date now, but there was two psychologists. It was Clance and Imes. I can't think it was 68 off the top of my head, but I might have got that wrong. But anyway, they were clinical psychologists and they were working with high achieving women. And that's where they first coined the term. And it was actually imposter phenomenon. I just can't say it very well. And they didn't like the term syndrome because they thought it sounded like a pathology. But I really struggled to say it, so I always just use syndrome. They just said, they found it in all sorts of people. And so I'd say most areas, you can have it at work, parents as well. Like a lot of people have that. They think, they're not doing a good enough job. They're an imposter. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, obviously, if you're a first-time parent, or all parents are probably making up a little bit. But it's like, that belief that everyone else is finding it really easy and you don't know what you're doing. Whereas, you are not the only one, I think is the very important point with that.
Yeah. And I talk from experience actually that, for many years in my past life as a software tester, I was very confident what I did for many, many years. And then I had a particular incident where my probation was extended at a particular job.
Oh.
It was the first time in 15 years of working that ever happened to me. And it really hit me in a way that I started to feel like an imposter, like I didn't know what I was doing. And it really was in my job. Like I was always starting to be like, oh my God, someone's going to find me out. Like I literally was thinking like someone's going to find me out. They're going to know I don't know what I'm doing. And it was really like acute, and it happened to really coincide with the pandemic, which probably wasn't in many ways it's a silver lining, which I'll probably explain later in the episode. But it was a very difficult time to be like, I'm not very good at what I'm doing. They think I'm a failure. They're just not telling me yet, right? And when they do find out that I'm a fraud, they're going to fire me, and it's in the middle of the pandemic and I'm not going to be able to find another job. That was really like how I was feeling quite often.
Yeah, it sounds about right. That's when I've had it, I've been convinced, like you just tell, it's the story that you tell yourself, isn't it? Like, and I guess this might bring me on quite well into one of the methods you can use to help with imposter syndrome. So it's based on like cognitive behaviour therapy and the ABC method or ABCDE method. And so the A is the activating event. So for you, that would be having your probation extended. And so the premise of it is that it's not an event itself that causes us distress. It's our beliefs around the event. So the A is for activating event, and then B is for beliefs. And then the C is consequences. And the consequences are either like emotional or behavioral. And it can be easy to confuse feelings and beliefs. So you might say, I feel stupid. That is a belief, not a consequence of it. And because you say I feel, it's not a feeling, it's a belief. And so one way to kind of help when people are having those feelings of being an imposter is to start, first of all, get really clear on what your beliefs are. So we know we have about, I saw something that was about 70,000 thoughts a day. It might not be that many, but we have so many thoughts going through our mind, all the constant chatter. And, a lot of this is out of our conscious awareness, and which is a good thing, because if we had to attend to every single thing, then our brain just wouldn't be able to function. But it also means that with these thoughts going through our minds, and if we're not questioning them, we're not aware of them, then they can lead to the C, the consequences of you feeling like an imposter, worrying that you're going to lose your job. And so first of all, it's like shining that light of awareness, getting clear on what your thoughts are. It's obviously quite hard if you're in the moment, but if you can, it's sort of first of all noticing that process, noticing these beliefs that are like popping up for you. And then it's the next step in it. So the ABCD, the D, there's two things you can do. In the moment, you can use distraction. Because if you can imagine, if you're in like a highly emotive state, it can be quite hard to think rationally. So if you're sort of in a situation, you can use distraction. So first of all, you can either say stop to yourself, either in your head, or you could do it out loud, depending where you are. You can also have like an elastic band around the wrist and like ping it. That's one thing, because you're just breaking it. It's just interrupting those thoughts. Then you can also, our brain is always trying to do things to protect us. It's not out there to get us. So rumination, when we're ruminating on thoughts, it's actually your brain's way of saying, oh, there's something you need to attend to, just making sure you're aware of that. So this is a common technique in CBT. if you just tell yourself, like, it's called schedule time later. So all you do is you tell yourself, right, I'm going to worry about that or think about that at 6 p.m. or whatever time it is, or having like a worry hour or worry 10 minutes, whatever you want to do. Just by doing that, it like tells your brain that you've got it covered. Like, it's okay, you don't need to keep reminding me. So that can also help. So that's like distraction. But the other side is disputation. So disputing your beliefs, basically. And this is what you really want to be doing, because you can't distractions are short-term fix. It's not getting to the root of the problem. So disputation is questioning your beliefs. So it's things like, what is the evidence? Is it logical? If someone else, would you like feel comfortable saying this to someone else? If someone else, would your friends and family believe it? So like really sort of questioning whether the validity of this belief. So that's one of the things. So, and also like, what is the evidence that this is true? So like in your case, but however long you've been doing the job, you've never had this before. That's one way of like questioning it. And then you can also sort of like, what are the alternatives? So if you think like, I was trying to think of an example, like if you're giving a presentation and someone looks really bored in the audience, like your instant belief might be, I'm rubbish. This is really boring, that I'm not very good at giving presentations. But actually you could like the alternatives could be that person's got something else on their mind. You know, we always like mind read, don't we? And no one knows what's going on in anyone else's mind at any one time. And it might be that something's happened. They might have had no sleep last night. They might be really hungover. It might be like nothing. We always say, it's funny, isn't it? We kind of make everything about us. and it's like, it's probably nothing to do with you, but, you know, we just build it all up. So that's the two other things. You can also, within disputation, it's like thinking like, is this useful? So even if it's true, is it useful to think that? I mean, and also decatastrophizing. So, again, often what we make up in our heads is way worse than anything that the reality tends to pan out to be. And so we catastrophize. We think, oh, like this is going to be awful. Like this, I'm going to get fired, like you said. And then, so decatastrophizing is thinking like, right, so if that did happen, how bad would that be? You know, so starting to really question it and try to bring it back into reality. And, you know, if, let's say, would you really lose your job after what have, you know, just questioning it more, basically. So that is and then, sorry, then almost forgot the final set, the final one, E. So E is effective new belief. So when you need to replace the old beliefs with something else. So the effective new belief could be, let's go back to the person in presentation. I'm capable of giving presentations. I've done them and I can do that, you know, something like that. So basically just changing it into something else, replacing it. And also what would be like the behavioural alternatives as well. So if you think in like the previous version, it might be like you were feeling anxious or things like that. So that's the sort of behavior, and you avoided maybe doing something. So basically the behavioural side of it. So again, you want in the E that you replace it. So effective new belief and like kind of consequences as a result of that. So that's the ABCDE method. Hopefully that made sense.
Oh, it's pretty. Yeah, it's very comprehensive, and it's, I guess, as a coach, actually, it's very much like how I have to deal when I'm working with people. You know, they're thinking, because so much of our life experience is experienced through how we're thinking. You know, like we have thoughts about ourselves, and then we keep having them. Like you said, I think 70,000 thoughts a day. It's a lot of thoughts we have. You know, most of them, you know, we're not even aware of. We don't even see, you know, the unconscious thoughts that are happening constantly. We might experience some of the emotions that come with those. Sometimes, you know, we get little directions from the emotions, but we don't realize how much of it. It's like, isn't it? I think it's like 80 or 90% of what we think is the same as we think, constantly, daily.
Yeah.
So we might have these thoughts about ourselves like, oh, I'm a failure. I'm useless. I'm never going to get good at presentations. Or, in my clients' cases, it's often things like, oh my God, no one's ever going to love me. I'm never going to be any good at dating, or I'm never going to be a good partner, or, if it's intimacy, they're never going to be good at sex. And they keep telling themselves this again and again and again. And what I'm hearing from this method is actually is again, similar to how I work with coaching. It's like, hold up a second. Let me just, if it was like for some reason, I'm thinking of like, if you've ever been to an old school mill that's by a river, there's like a kind of wheel that turns in the water. It's like putting your hand in there and go, wait a minute, let's just stop this wheel for a moment, people. Let's stop the wheel. And can we have a look at this wheel? Like, is this, like, what you're thinking, is it true? Do you have evidence for this thing? And I do this a lot with people. I'm like, do you have evidence for this? And they're like, oh yeah, I once did this thing and someone, I once talked to a girl in a bar and she didn't want to talk to me. You're like, okay. Has someone ever tried to talk to you and didn't want to? And they're like, yeah. You're like, when was that? I was walking down the street and they wanted to sell me insurance, or, no, there's no insurance people on the street anymore, but there's often people trying to, get you to sign up to give money to charities. And you're like, why did you not want to stop? They're like, well, I was busy. I was trying to get somewhere. I was trying to do something. I had to go meet a friend. I was already late. And I was like, so that had nothing to do with them. And then, usually in that moment, they're like, no, it was nothing to do with them. So you're making it all about you. And as you said, as humans, we kind of do this. We make everything about ourselves, which is interesting because this is what young children do. Young children internalize everything that occurs in the world about them. Like, oh, my parents went out for dinner. That means that they don't want to be around me, or and so forth. It's almost like it's like acting like children in our adulthood, where we see the world around us and we make everything about us. Like everything. It's like, oh, Jenny's wearing red. That means she hates me. Oh my God. Like, that's because I'm a terrible human being. But we never stop. We very rarely stop and go, wait, does this make sense, or am I fucking stupid? Like, not in sort of malicious way, people. I'm not calling you fucking stupid because I'm also fucking stupid too. But in the way that we're like, wait a minute, is this even a logical set of thinking that I'm having about myself? Like, is this even rationally possible? Or have I just gone into some sort of like really out there linked thinking that's really just hurting my own self and the way I view myself? And I guess after my little monologue there, why I was thinking about this is kind of why, actually. Like, what is it that causes imposter syndrome? Because obviously some people have it. Some people have it to a lesser degree. Some people have it to more of a degree. But what are some of the kind of underlying causes of imposter syndrome?
Well, I think it was in the book by Dr. Pauline Clance, and she was talking about kind of where it sort of stems from. And a lot of it was like sort of childhood, the classic. So it was kind of, one of the things was if you had a sibling that was particularly academic or whatever, and you were always like never seen as being like that, then you're always going to question your abilities. Or the other thing is, if you were in a family that really emphasized achievement over everything else. And then it's also, there's sort of think about the work of Carol Dweck with like the growth versus fixed mindset. So there was one intervention a successful intervention was based on the growth mindset coaching. So basically a fixed mindset is where you think that talent is, it's innate. So you are born with a certain level of capability, and that can't be changed. So you might be sporty, or it could be academia, but that's it. That's all you've got. And then a growth mindset is where you think that things can be developed. And so you can work hard and you can become more skilled. And I think there's a book I was reading at the moment as well, and it was called Grit by Angela Duckworth, I think it was. And this is all about, again, it's based on the kind of similar thing. And it was saying, it's quite interesting that even though people were asked if, like, what was more important, like natural talent or hard work, even though people said hard work, when they did, I can't remember how they did it, but they did some kind of study and it uncovered their unconscious bias, and it was actually still natural talent. And it was saying also, like, with athletes and things, we often think that all these people are like naturally gifted, and obviously they do have something, if like Michael, it's Michael Phelps, isn't it? Yeah, the swimmer. Like obviously he's like very, very designed for swimming. But they were saying that, it's hard work is the most important thing. All these hours that athletes put in, when you've got like top musicians, they'll like go for, they'll be practicing for like 8-10 hours a day. And so it's basically around that thing of, if you think that talent or your abilities are fixed and you can't get better. So if you fail, then you're going to internalize that as being a failure rather than you failed at something. And actually that brings me on to like the imposter profile. So there was 6 components of the imposter profile. So it's the imposter cycle, which I talked about before with the not internalizing the success. But there's also a fear of failure as one of like a key component. And so people with this kind of aspect of it are terrified of failing, and they have like anxiety over making any kind of mistake, and they equate sort of shame and humiliation with mistakes. And like I just touched on, it's like that, not realizing that it's nothing to do with them as a person. We are fallible human beings. We can make mistakes, we can get knocked back, and it's nothing on you as a person. So this is like, self-esteem and confidence. It's that kind of element of it. And there's also, there's a Superman, Superwoman aspect of it, and whereby they tend to be perfectionists, and this, so they need to be, not only do they need to be the best, they need to be the best in like every area of their life. So it could be like, need to be the perfect employees, I need to be the perfect parent, perfect partner. And, if you're juggling all these different things, you can't excel at everything. And they also, like when they do fail, they get overwhelmed by this failure, rather than just realizing that, you're not going to be successful all the time. And that's okay. And also, so there's one more actually. There is the need to be special. And so this is, again, ties into where it comes from. So if people are particularly gifted at school, or even later on, like say the top athlete, top in your class or what have you, when you go out into the wider world and there's like, you're not the big fish in a small pond, you realize that there are lots of other very talented people. Rather than realizing that other people can be good or even better than you, that doesn't take away from your own abilities. That's another aspect of where it comes from. So, you go out and then you're like, oh, I'm not the best anymore. I'm used to being the best. That means that obviously I'm not very talented. So that's kind of roundabout answer of where it comes from.
And it was really comprehensive. But the thing that really jumped to my mind, and this is because I am a coach with dating and stuff, is like I really see where this imposter syndrome shows up in people's dating lives, right? Because if you are kind of convinced that it's all about natural talent, maybe good looks and charisma and things like that, and you don't have that, then you're instantly going to feel like you're an imposter and you're not good enough. And if you add in the fact that you have a fear of failure, like maybe you have to approach a woman or you have to go on a date and you're anxious about it going wrong or you failing, often seeing things as very binary, then this imposter syndrome is just going to grow and grow and grow inside of your kind of mind and your psyche, and especially in the world of dating. Yeah,
and I can imagine it's that thing of, if you got rejected or someone didn't like, they didn't find you they didn't find you attractive or what have you. It's taking that as being something against you rather than it's just not being right. And also, I think coming back to that kind of, there's a thing called, I can't remember the name of it now. So basically it's where you think, it comes back to the attribution theory, actually, how we attribute the causes of an event. And one of the things, it's based on Dr. Martin Seligman's work on like optimism. And one of the things would be like, if it's specific or general, if it's or universal is one of the 3 Ps. And basically it was saying like, in this scenario, this is what made me think of it. It's like, they didn't find me attractive, therefore I'm never going to meet anyone and I'm going to die alone. It's that kind of generalizing and then like catastrophizing it and like not keeping things just to one specific event. It's going to be across the board kind of thing. So yeah, I can see where that would work.
Yeah. And it's that what I say to my clients is like where there's a problem or challenge in this moment, right? That's happening. Like you've been rejected, right? Or your date hasn't gone well. And then you project that problem into the future, but you blow it up disproportionately, right? You grow up really disproportionately. And then you connect to the story of that. So that's, as you said there, oh, no one's going to love me. I'm going to be alone forever. And then you experience the emotions of that story in the present moment, right? And you get overwhelmed by it and you continue to cycle through the story and the emotions. And this gets us really stuck. It gets us like, I'm doomed, right, for life because this person rejected me. And that means that everyone's going to reject me forever. And then no one's going to love me forever. And I'm going to feel sadness. I'm going to feel despair. I'm going to feel anger. I'm going to feel frustration. And I guess this is, and I see this again and again with clients, right? They internalize all these emotions and this story and they get stuck in it. They get completely stuck in it and they're just like, it's all hopeless until they actually speak to somebody and say, this is how I'm feeling, right? Or because if we just stay in our own minds, cycling around in circles, we actually just get deeper and deeper into the story because we've got no outside influence. No one to kind of put their hand in the wheel and say, hey, like what you're thinking, is that true? Do you actually have evidence for that? Like if one person rejected you, like, can you live? Can you meet someone tomorrow? You know, often as I say to my clients, is you don't need every person you meet and date to like you and want you. You really only need one person, right? To like you and want you, right? And if that takes 2, 3, 4 years, then that's cool, right? That's fine. Like you're going to survive. It took me best part of 15 years to meet my now partner, right? And I had a few along the way that didn't quite work out. But it's this idea of how we see ourselves and how we project our mistakes and problems and failures, making something that's very temporary into something very permanent about who we are moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually another one of the 3 Ps. It's permanence. Was like, yeah, if you thought it was going to be temporary or like forever. Can't remember the permanence. Well, I can't remember the other 2. They'll come back to me.
And I'm thinking of another P that just jumped in my head, but I think this is really relevant to imposter syndrome. Why? Because I'm thinking of myself, but I'm also thinking of the men I've worked with is, why is it that people with imposter syndrome struggle so much with praise and being praised by other people in particular?
Because they don't believe it. So this is so it's that thing, it's denial of competence and discounting of praise. They really don't believe, they really do, they discount praise because they just think it's wrong. So I know for me, they basically, because if you feel like you don't deserve something, then it feels very uncomfortable, doesn't it? So, so if someone gives you praise rather than, like I said, but I think I touched before with the whole internalizing success, you would actually think really things like, I must have fooled them. They must have they didn't realize I'm actually like crap and I don't know what I'm doing. And you're almost like embarrassed that, oh my God, they they got this wrong, and I fault them as well. And so yeah, that would be the reason. And yeah, I remember before, like one of my good friends, like when I was teaching, she teaches Pilates, and she's actually so she's a sport therapy at university, so pretty much like a physio level. And I remember like always really respecting her because like her knowledge of anatomy is like really good. And she was always telling me like, look, you're really good. Like she'll get so annoyed with me for like not believing in myself, because she was like, you're one of the best people. Because there are a lot of people who aren't that good in the fitness world. And she was like, you're so good, but you just don't believe in yourself. But I like genuinely thought, she just doesn't know that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't know what I'm doing. And yeah, I found that really uncomfortable, because I was like, oh God, what about when she finds out that I'm actually crap? And yeah, it's just that real deep-rooted belief that you don't deserve the praise, basically.
And it's something that I also see, and I see myself, but in others, is like rejection of praise. Like, someone compliments you on something or says you've done something well, and you give them justification or excuses or buts. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, so, you've dressed really well. Oh yeah, but you know what it is? Actually, a friend of mine just gave me these clothes. And I think you kind of mentioned this before, it's like distancing from success. That's not the phrase you use, but it's like rejection of success, externalizing of success. I think the phrase you might have used is like saying that this success I'm experiencing, and you've noticed, no, that's not me. That's somebody else that did that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's quite amazing. I think they said in the book, it was quite an ingenious ability to discount praise. And it's like, yeah, the things that when you actually question it, when you think, if you listen to it back, you'd be like, that's actually ridiculous. Like you're not going to get a job because someone felt sorry for you. Or, even if like no one else applied for a job, they wouldn't take you on if you weren't capable of doing it. Like they would just, start the search again. And it's like, yeah, I wish they should write a book of them all. It'd be quite funny to read.
All the excuses that people make to not receive the praises and I put them, and then we could all sit and read it and be like, wow, this is, if you've got imposter syndrome, right, or some degree of imposter syndrome, if you were to read other people's like rejection of praise, like, I don't know, a doctor who is top of their profession and they surgery, right? So they're great at surgery, and then they do a surgery, and the family afterwards like, thank you so much, like you were so amazing at what you did. And they say, oh, you know what, it wasn't me, really, to be honest, like I just kind of showed up, the nurses did most of the stuff, and like we'd read that and be like, wow, and I see this so firsthand with men that I work with, is when they either it's some sort of dating experience, or just some success that happens in their work. A number of the clients I work with now are men, and I'm like, they tell me they've done something really good. Like, I don't know, I've had a couple of clients who have had their work shown in museums, right? Quite prestigious museums. And the times where they've said to me, oh yeah, but I didn't really do anything. Or no, that wasn't really mine. I just kind of like, blah, blah, blah. And I have to really stop them. Right? And it's something I've really doing more and more now with my clients, is I stop them. I'm like, okay, I hear that, but can we just celebrate the fact that you, in your profession, have got your work into a very prestigious place where people are enjoying it? And like, tell me, how many people are seeing your work every day? How many people go through this museum? Thousands a day? So your work's going to be in a museum, it's going to be appreciated and enjoyed by thousands of people every day. There's these other writers that have written about your work to say how great it is. I almost kind of like ram home the internalization of their success, because I see that without doing that, they just continue to kind of bat it away. Like, Roger Federer hitting off backhands and forehands, they become very, very skilled at it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it just made me, I don't know why, it made me think of earlier. It's like, there's another thing you can, like, I think I was actually listening to a podcast with Peter Attia. He was talking about, it was something that was slightly different. It was about, people being hard on themselves. And it's I was thinking this before, like before I used to be like really hard on myself, and I'd have all these really horrible thoughts directed at myself, repeating over and over, like we said. And one of the techniques you can do is like, how would you speak to someone else? So you can flip it around with the imposter syndrome. So with the achievement, imagine if that was your friend, what would you say to them? And really explain to trying to kind of get away from your view of yourself and seeing it from like the outsider. And that can help you get some distance and a bit more objectivity in how you see it. And then maybe they'll be like, oh, actually, yeah, that is quite impressive. But yeah, like we said, always discounting the praise.
Always. And I guess the question that kind of comes to my mind, because you mentioned earlier that it was linked with high achieving women in particular. And I wonder what your thoughts are, if there's something that's been written about this, is there a link between imposter syndrome and how men view masculinity and themselves within that kind of the construct of masculinity?
I haven't really come across anything to do with that. Or the only thing that I really found was, there's one thing that was actually came up within it was actually within the imposter profile again. There was fear of success was one of the aspects, which is quite interesting. And there was one of them was fear of success in that you're worried that once you get there, you won't be able to do it. So you're worried about having to, if you've been like, especially I guess if you've been like doing the whole over preparing, you're like, well, I can't keep this up forever. For women, it was saying like the fear of success, because if you're successful, you might get rejected by others because if you're doing better than them. And then under the, for the men, it was about what fear of doing better than your father in case you kind of I think it was to do with sort of making them feel demasculated by, if you're earning more than them and something. So you have this fear of success. But I mean, apart from that, I think there's so much more research that should be done. Like when I was doing my MSc and I actually like, when I finished, I was thinking about doing a PhD and then I was like, oh, but studying, I might come back to it later. It was all, there wasn't like that much contemporary research into it. And I think there's so much more that can be done. It was like a lot of it was looking at, who has it? Like, is it men and is it women? And some people said that it was more women. Some people said it was more in men. And some people said it was both. But yeah, I think it's something I might try and see if I can find some more interesting things on it. But yeah, I think there's a lot more that could be done in exploring it. Some qualitative studies rather than the quantitative.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I wonder, because it's, when we talked about the praise there, I see that a lot for the men I work with, like a struggle to praise themselves, like a really big one. They're not wanting to make other people feel small. There's this kind of idea that if they are praising themselves and they celebrate, then they're making other people feel smaller, or they might make other people feel bad as well. Like, if I say how good I'm doing, I might other people feel bad. And that constantly rejecting of praise, I see also kind of contributes to, downplaying of success, which starts to make us feel like, should I really be here? Because we can't acknowledge our success. I definitely see that as a piece in the men I work with quite often as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else from a kind of masculinity point of view that becomes really obvious.
It'd be interesting to see if there was a cultural thing. Sorry.
Yeah. No, and this is something that I was thinking actually, because I spoke to a few friends about imposter syndrome, and I wonder if you've come from a culture of modesty, where some English cultures are very much like, don't make a big scene about you doing well, opposed to say American culture, which I think is a lot more like, hey, let's celebrate. I just, walked down the street and came back again. We have this kind of culture of like, don't make too much sound about it. Or my girlfriend, she's from Sweden, and they have a phrase there, and someone Swedish is going to butcher me for this one. I think it's hunterlagen. So it's like basically that you don't try and be better than other people. You don't kind of rise above your station. So it's like a whole phrase amongst the country about this, like not trying to be better than other people. So, not celebrating successes too much, downplaying things. So I definitely can see there's probably some kind of cultural pieces there around, don't try and be, because a lot of imposter syndrome is like, don't acknowledge your own greatness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it ties with that whole thing, don't show off. You're showing off, and it's seen as like a bad thing, isn't it? And, if, you're big headed, or, it's like very much, we don't like it. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're arrogant or whatever. But it's like, well, actually, it's important to celebrate your success. Like, especially if you worked hard for something and then you do well, you want to sort of really bask in it. You're not like rubbing it in other people's faces. And I think that also like suggests that just if you're doing well, it doesn't mean that other people can't, you could all rise up. There's that thing, isn't it, of like, I'm thinking of an example. This is a bit of a random example, but I remember when I worked in had a temp job, I think it was like between years at university. And it was, I worked in this office, and like it was all women, and they were all like quite overweight. And I remember them being like, this will make sense in a second. And I remember they're like, oh, we'll fatten you up. And I was just thinking, well, no, I don't want to be fattened up. But I was thinking just more like, rather than thinking like doing something that like they obviously felt uncomfortable that I was thinner than them. So rather than like trying to lose weight, they were trying to fatten me up. And I just thought, and it was a bit like that, isn't it? It's like, rather than people like striving to do better, it's like, pull you all down, like don't achieve anything. That's just what it made me think of. Bit random, off topic.
But no, it is very much that, isn't it? It's like, oh, instead of just looking at like why we don't want to celebrate success, why we think other people will be so offended or upset by us celebrating ourselves and just showing up as being good and great or whatever. Instead of us maybe like being like, oh no, it's like giving confidence to other people, we try and downplay and degrade and kind of erase our own confidence, right? When, for instance, inside a relationship, and I know this happens inside people's relationships, right? Where one partner is succeeding in their work or what it may be, and that partner starts to hide their success and not talk about it because they don't want their partner to feel like they're being belittled and so forth, right? So instead of going, hey, I'm doing really, really well, I'm succeeding, let's celebrate, like, and also celebrating the other person for the wonderful things they're doing, and saying, oh, like if you feel like, my celebration puts you in the shadows, let's talk about this, let's work on this. It's me who should now kind of downgrade and be very quiet about the ways that I'm succeeding and doing very well. And I think it's really interesting to me because this is something that me and my partner talked about at the beginning of our relationship, where this is something she experienced in her past relationships. And I've always been of the mindset, like, if I feel something about someone else's success, if Jenny's doing really, really well, right? She's getting like thousands of views on her Instagram page, and I'm not getting thousands of views on my Instagram page. I should be happy for Jenny, right? I should be like, great, you go, girl. Like, make that shit happen. Now, I might feel like lesser than, but that's my problem. That's my problem for me to deal with. I should not put that problem onto Jenny and make her feel shitty about her own success. And I think this is a big cultural thing that we have, because there's also the fact of when people succeed and do well, and I'm thinking of football in particular here and sport in particular, there is a sense that we feel like we're just waiting to tear them down at some point. We're looking for a way to bring them back down and make them feel like they're the same level as us. And I imagine for people with imposter syndrome, because I imagine that sportsmen, and I think I've read a few things about this before, like sportsmen and athletes and sportswomen and so forth, they have massive, massive problems with imposter syndrome, right? Because it's almost like their fuel that keeps them going. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not really good at this, but I'm going to just work harder to get better. But there's also that kind of dark aspect that they're also worried about the fact that, they're going to get, someone's looking for ways to bring them down a few notches, which I think is quite a nasty cultural aspect that we have.
Yeah. I mean, because the thing is, isn't it, like when people are successful, it should be inspiring because it shows that you could do it too. But it's very, I mean, I've noticed myself do it as well. And it's normally if I'm feeling unhappy with myself, that's when you kind of you kind of have those thoughts a bit more. But yeah, rather than rising up, we want to pull down. Rise up yourself and drag people back, pull them back down, because like you're jealous of it. But it is, like you just touched on it, it's very much it's your, whenever you have any kind of emotional reaction, it's normally from within, isn't it? It's like it's triggered something. But yeah, with sports people, I think Serena Williams said she had imposter syndrome. And who's the female football captain? Can't remember her name now. She said,
"Is it Leah Williams?" No.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, yes. Like she's quite a lot of sports people, and you would think that because they are constantly being kind of evaluated on their performance, aren't they? Because they've got instant feedback, and you can't like cheat. But I guess when you're coming back to this like externalizing success, it would be things like, they didn't play as well as they could, or they were having a bad day, or things like that. And I think you've touched on something there. Yeah, with the they're always like, just trying to get like, don't want people to get too big for their boots. And like kind of that, even that's a saying, isn't it? And it'd be interesting to see if it was the same like in all cultures. Like, is it the same in America? I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to look into it.
Because it feels like more of a culture of like people get big and there's like a celebration, like even through like, not school and university, the way that they have sportsmen, they celebrate them, and it's like massive sport, high school and college sport is a business. Yes. It's a massive business in the States, like not so tiny and piddly like it is in the UK, in the UK. So there's more of a kind of celebration of people's greatness. So you would feel that maybe there would be kind of less of that, but obviously we have not done any studies on this.
Have to do a study.
Don't quote us. So yeah, and I think it's remarkable here actually is like when you said there, like Serena Williams feeling like an imposter. This is Serena Williams, arguably one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Yeah. Felt like she was an imposter when she stepped on the court. After all she'd won, over all the amount of time that she'd won it, right? to go through what she had gone through, because we think of her upbringing, playing tennis on tennis courts where dad had to like threaten people to get out of the way. One of her siblings was shot dead. And she feels like an imposter, right? So to people and listeners, this is for you and for me. You can, it's almost like you can have all the success and that imposter syndrome may never disappear. It may always be with you, right? And I guess maybe we'll move into this in a second. It becomes a lot more about how do I manage the imposter syndrome? And you've talked about some techniques for that, but actually what I got from what you explained is the ways in which we like really get ourselves out of imposter syndromes is through awareness, through self-awareness of taking ourselves out of the kind of small self, which is when we like looking at ourselves and being like, oh, poor me. Like this one person didn't look at me the way I wanted to, or I spelt something wrong, and looking at the wider picture of perspective and going, actually, over the course of a period of time, I'm doing really well here, actually. And I can acknowledge that for myself. But I imagine there's a number of other, that's my very simplistic view, but there's a number of other ways in which we can start to tame our imposter syndrome. So actually, yeah, maybe that's the question then. Maybe that is it. It's like, what sort of mindset changes and shifts can we start to make ourselves to overcome or tame our imposter syndrome?
Yes, well, obviously we touched on the ABC model earlier. I think it's Matthews and Imes actually did an intervention, and they found just knowing that other people experienced it was enough to help reduce some of the symptoms. So if you, I think people are talking about it more now. I see it mentioned like online a lot more, but if it is something the problem is a lot of people, when you're suffering imposter syndrome, you think, no, but it's not imposter syndrome. I really don't know what I'm doing and I am just a bit shit. So it's like realizing that it's not. So first of all, like, yeah, if you are having feelings like that, talk to people, because then you might find that they feel the same, and that can really help. And obviously us telling everyone that we've experienced it, that would also help. So another way is looking back, like write a list of all your successes, and you can even do like a pie chart, and you could draw in, because maybe other things did attribute to the success, but it's not going to be just external. And then maybe try and get like really clear on what you did that led to these successes. And then if you're having like a bad day, what have you, you can come back and read over it and just remind yourself, because like we forget everything we've achieved. And it's like, I've got friends who are sort of entrepreneurs, and it's very easy to discount everything that you've done. And I've had it myself, and I'll be talking about what I've done in a week, because I'm like, I haven't really done anything. I haven't really worked this week. And then I start talking, and it's like, I did this, this, and this, and this. So it's like, really having a record of what you've been doing, and so you can, or your achievements, so you can sort of read them and be like, oh, actually, that is quite impressive. And that's another way. Acceptance commitment therapy. So the other thing I put in my intervention. So acceptance commitment therapy is a third wave behaviour therapy. And so CBT is about sort of changing your thoughts, whereas acceptance commitment therapy is more about, as the name suggests, accepting. It's based around sort of mindfulness and things. And their analogy is, like, imagine you've got a beach ball in the sea and you're trying to push it under the water, and then it just keeps popping back up. And then as soon as you stop, it takes a lot of effort. And then as soon as you stop, it just pops up. And so basically saying, like, when you're trying to change your thoughts, it can take a lot of conscious effort, and particularly like trying to stop your thoughts, because as anyone who's tried meditating knows, you can't stop thinking. So acceptance commitment therapy is about, again, awareness. But realizing that your thoughts are just thoughts, they're not reality, and like creating a bit of distance. And there's one technique called cognitive diffusion. I'll just talk about this one first. So if you think like you've got sort of like the world around you, and then you've got your thoughts, and then they kind of fuse. So you believe your thoughts become what you think is reality. And then cognitive diffusion is you're trying to split them up again. So first of all, you'll have like a challenging thought or a triggering thought. So it could be, I am stupid, or I don't know what I'm doing. And then so you just close your eyes and you just repeat it to yourself, like really fusing with that thought. And then you say, I'm having the thought that I am stupid. So, or what have you. And then again, you like 10 times. And then the final one is, I notice that I'm having the thought that I am stupid. And it's that distance from the thought, and it can really help you kind of detach from it rather than being really immersed and fused with it, thinking that it's reality. So those are like a few different things that people can do. But I think, like you touched on, just being aware that that is what it is, and trying to sort of, whenever those feelings come up, start to question it, and don't automatically believe that your thinking is correct, because we all have these thinking errors, and it can't be trusted.
Yeah, those techniques are really beautiful, and there's the things that I've actually through various kind of mindfulness retreats and so forth have done, is like creating that, as you said, creating that space between our thinking, because we are so as I say to a lot of men, it's like you treat your thinking as if you relate to your thinking as if it's a wall that's right in front of your nose, and it is everything that's happening, and that's like your whole sense of reality. So I want you to take a couple of steps back from your thinking and see that what's in front of you is a wall, and around the wall is a whole room and a door that you can leave. You know, it's like that sort of kind of idea. It's like, actually, your thinking, what goes through your mind day to day, isn't the truth of reality and isn't the truth of who you are. It just happens to be some thinking that passes through your mind. You know, the thinking you got from the TV show you watched last night, some of that thinking comes from your parents, some of it comes from society, some of it comes from, you know, just some nasty bullies you may have had when you were, 12 years old. But so much of the thoughts that we have, they're not our own, they're not generated by us, and we're not actually choosing to have them.
Yeah. And I think that's where sort of mindfulness and meditation is really can be really powerful, because I mean, I must say I really struggled to start meditating because my brain has always been like super busy, and I just found it so frustrating that, and I was like, I knew that I should do it. Shouldn't say those words either, but yeah, I knew the benefits. Let's say I knew the benefits. Like, you know, it's like shutting, you know, calming down your nervous system. Like, it's really good for your brain to make it work better. But yeah, I used to really struggle. But that's a little tip for anyone who wants to start. I found the game changer for me. Well, there's two. One was to only do 5 minutes. I'd been trying to start at 10, which was ridiculous when it's something really quite challenging. You can even just do 3. There are benefits shown at 3. But the thing that I found really helpful was doing an extra receptive focus. So I started off like doing flame gazing. And because you're a bit away from here, I found that made such a difference. Now I can do it with my eyes closed. I haven't bothered trying to increase it from 5 minutes. I'm happy with my 5 minutes. But yeah, just having that extra receptive focus. And then since I have been doing this, it must be I can't remember when I started, a few months now, I'd say. And I have noticed my mind is I'm less caught up in thoughts all the time. So it has really helped me in my day to day. And but our minds, we just get caught up in them, and so we get hijacked by our thinking, don't we? And without questioning it, like you said. So yeah, having that, a bit of stepping back. I like your analogy of the room. That's a really good one. I might steal it.
Yeah, it's meditation is something I think I'm lucky enough. I traveled across India and into like Southeast Asia, so I met a lot of monks.
Yeah.
And the truth be told, I'm a black man wandering around India and Southeast Asia, so the monks always often come and spoke to me. So I'd often ask some questions. And I remember being in Myanmar, which is modern day Burma, and I asked this monk, and I was like, what's some meditation tips, because my mind is always racing and busy. And he just replied to me, he said, monkey mind, always there.
Yeah.
Monkey mind, never go away. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, monkey mind, always there, never go away. And he was like pointing at himself, me, still have monkey mind. And I was like, what? You've been doing this for probably like 30, 40 years of your life, and you're telling me that it never goes away. And I remember after that thinking like, oh, what's the point in this, and blah, blah, blah. And I did a meditation retreat. I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat a number of years ago. And one of the things that was talked about on some of the recordings was about our expectations. The expectation we have around meditation, that when we sit down to meditate, we should be X. We should be able to turn off our mind. We should be able to not focus on our thoughts. We shouldn't get caught up. And one of the recordings, it was just like, all the expectations you have, drop them, because they're actually getting in the way of you meditating. Meditation isn't meant to be easy. It's not meant to be smooth. It's not meant to be conquered. There is no goal with the meditation. There is no like quietening the mind and having Zen silence, right? Because I feel like, and I have no proof for this, people, this is just my ludicrous thoughts. I believe that it's as if like Christianity made up this idea about all this meditation, because most of it come from the East, to discredit it, that like meditation, when you meditate, your mind should be completely clear, which would basically mean that no one would be able to meditate, because even me, I've been meditating on and off, though very consistently actually, for probably 6 or 7 years now. And even I sit down for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, and my mind still races and gets lost in thought. That is part of the process. Doing the hard shit and getting lost and coming back. That's how it was taught to me by one of my meditation teachers. Like, the art of meditation isn't staying on point. The art of meditation is noticing, bringing your awareness to notice, a bit like what we've talked about, noticing that you're lost in these thoughts and coming back to the aim of the focus. And in fact, that is the whole point of, especially meditations where you're focused on the breath or some sort of sensation in the body, is to train your mind to come back from distraction, because we're always going to be distracted. It's the nature of our human experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it made me think of something like someone I know went on one of those Vipassana retreats. And I remember I was talking to him because also it was one thing I said, I was like, oh, I'm not very good at meditating. It's like, you can't be good or bad. You're either meditating or not. And it's like the intention of being there. And yeah, he also said that thing of it's like, it's the catching yourself. But it's really funny. I said to him, like, he was going on this Vipassana, and I said like, oh, so are you going to feel like amazing when you get back? And he was like, well, that's actually not the point. He said that the whole idea around like meditation or like all of these practices is being okay with whatever is. So because I'm very much like, I always want to feel better. I always want to feel amazing. I want to have loads of energy. I hate being tired. So I'm always like trying to escape what I class as the negative. And he was saying, well, it's, you're going to have bad stuff is going to happen in your life. Things, it's just the nature of existence. And it's the whole point of it is to be okay with what is, and it just the acceptance, isn't it? Accepting things as they are. And that was just like, just like really a revelation. I was like, wow, that's quite amazing. So yeah, it's like, because we always have this thing, don't we? It's like positive. I don't like, because I don't like the terms positive and negative emotions, because it suggests that some of them are bad. So it's like, we don't want anger, we don't want sadness, but you have to have that to have what we class as the good emotions. So you have to be willing to kind of go through all of them, pleasure and pain and all those kind of things. And we do tend to kind of push down the emotions or the feelings that we don't like, rather than just allowing them to be. So yeah, that's what I learned from him.
Yeah, and it almost ties it back into the imposter syndrome. It's like being with what is, with just being with what's there for us instead of trying to change. And I know we live in a society that's often trying to get somewhere else from where we are now. It's this kind of constant goal-orientated society that meditation almost goes against goal-orientated society, because meditation is just about being with what is. Goal-orientated society is always, and I guess you could say this is capitalism in a nutshell, isn't it? It's like we need to get somewhere else. And the constant pursuit of trying to get to somewhere else from where we are, because where we are isn't as good as where we need to get to next.
Yeah. Well, I think there was something about so it was to do with like dopamine and the rewards, and it was saying like to stay motivated is to enjoy the process. So it's like you said, as soon as, that's why like sort of money doesn't really make people happy, because you buy a new car and then you're instantly like that excitement, like that goes very quickly. And then it's like, what else do I need to make me happy? And it doesn't happen. So it's great to have goals, but you enjoy the process of getting there, enjoy like the steps rather than just the destination, which is you're never going to be happy, because as soon as you get there, it'll be the next thing.
There's always another destination.
And I was actually thinking also with the
wrap up, what was?
I'm sorry. I was going to say one more thing about us. Yeah. And also that makes you think about the imposter syndrome again. It's again about acceptance. You might never get rid of those feelings. It's about being okay with those feelings, like we said. Like, so once you've got the awareness, your goal might not be to not feel like an imposter. It might be to be comfortable with those feelings and still go on and do things, not let it stop you from putting yourself out there, applying for jobs, things like that, rather than thinking that perhaps you're going to get rid of it completely.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. But the last question I wanted to ask before we wrap up actually was about how can we help a partner or a friend who we see struggling with imposter syndrome? Because, often we want to help people, we want to be of service to the people in our lives. Like, is there anything that we can do to help them with their imposter syndrome?
I think you could, there's actually an exercise. It might be quite difficult with a partner. It depends on your relationship. It's called, I would say that obviously point them towards things that might help them realize that that's what it is, rather than actually themselves. But there's an exercise called the externalization of voices. And basically how it works is back to the ABC model that I talked about before, is it can be a bit triggering for people, but it's basically the partner is your, how do I say this? Like your negative voice. So, and you practice disputing by answering them. So you can role play that exercise together, but it might be quite difficult because they might just like go down into themselves. But I mean, if you've got a kind of relationship, you can practice challenging your irrational beliefs by someone else like saying them to you, but you might find that quite difficult. So in those situations, maybe just pointed them to like some of the literature about it. Or you could actually ask them like, what's the evidence? Like you say, like with the coaching questions, ask them if it's logical. Find out what their beliefs are. Like you could ask certain questions to try and unpick it a little bit and help them. And just help them to realize that they're not alone, and it is this an irrational belief rather than the reality. Might help.
Beautiful. Yeah, because I think, like you said there, it can be difficult to then have that conversation. I imagine that, asking your partner to embody your negative voice and then giving you the opportunity there to kind of dispute that could be really, really powerful, to sit there and like hear it yourself. But I think there's also the worry that we might internalize that our partner really thinks that about us. That's something that I can imagine for some people, not all people. But I think that just, asking for evidence, it's like being supportive to who our partner is, and what they're trying to do is a really important piece there. It's like, because often we see people struggling in our lives, we want to help. And I see this a lot with men that I work with, is like they see someone struggling and they want to help them, but they don't, because they don't want to feel like they're being a burden, or they annoying them, or they might upset them by trying to help them, right? Yeah. Which is I definitely want to see with men a lot. They're like, oh, my mate's struggling. I'm like, how are you trying to help him? Or, oh, well, I don't want him to feel like, he can't help himself and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, maybe he wants some help. And also we do this with partners as well. But being there for someone, like you said, it just makes such a difference, because imposter syndrome is difficult. And one of the things I also probably finish up with is like, I almost don't know anybody. I might know a few people, but I'm talking about in the numbers of like 50, hundreds of people that I've met who are successful in what they do often, or whatever it is they do. It's not necessarily financial or kind of career success. They have imposter syndrome to some capacity. They feel like they're a fraud. They feel like they're a charlatan in some way. And it's just to know that like there's so many people with this, and there's so many people that find ways to manage it using many of the great techniques you've said, Jenny, that you're not alone. You're not alone in this thinking. You're not unique. You're not actually, and this is going to sound harsh, you're not that special in your thinking about yourself and your deficiencies, which also is the beauty of it, because if everyone else around you you're seeing is able to kind of make life joyful and happy to some degree, some less or more degree, then you also have the capacity to do that as well.
Oh, that's a really nice way of looking at it. And yeah, absolutely agree. I like that. You're not special in your that's absolutely it. And knowing you are not alone, and hopefully some of those techniques people find useful, even if it is like I said, just knowing that there's so many of us dealing with the same things, but it doesn't mean that you can't go on and achieve amazing things. And in some ways, I guess it can also be the drive behind it. But hopefully the techniques can help to sort of reduce some of the anxiety around it, because I know that it can be quite detrimental for people's mental health when it's really rears its ugly head.
Definitely. And as we come to end, where can our listeners kind of get in contact with you if they wanting to work with you or find out more about, what it is the ways that you help your clients with their imposter syndrome? I
am on Instagram is Jenny C. Devonshire. or my website. So I do a lot of work with corporates. So it's www.pause2perform.co. But I mean, I'm sure you're linked to it so people can find me. Or I'm also on LinkedIn. It's Jenny Devonshire.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for such a comprehensive, explanation and techniques and helping people get out of their, I feel like I hate to use the word sometimes like overcome, because I know from a sales point of view, it works really well. But from an honesty point of view, I come to realize that the best we can do with much of our life is not so much overcome, but be with and tame our various syndromes and disorders we have. So thank you so much for presenting so much for how people can tame their imposter syndrome.
Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Pleasure. So thank you, listeners. I'm sure you have probably learned a hell of a lot today about imposter syndrome, right? And not feel so lonely in it. And I'd love to hear from you, what you've taken away, maybe some insights, maybe there's some things you're going to start to do differently in your life. And I'm sure myself and Jenny would love to hear from you. All our Instagram details and contact details will be below in the show notes. So feel free to reach out and drop us a message and ask any questions. But until next week, people, I'll say ciao, ciao.